In this video, we're talking about how to build the perfect team, and we're going to look at the 4 people you need if you want to grow your business. Now, this is the 3rd video in this series on creating joint ventures. So if you've not seen those other videos already, then go and watch them next, and then you'll get the full picture of what we're talking about. This model can be used on a micro scale right up to the macro scale. So on the micro scale, it might be putting a team together for a single project. It might be putting a management team together for a business, or at a macro scale, it might be finding the right people to sit on your board of directors. And it can be used for anything from running a project to, at a very high level, running the entire country. The reason I'm sharing these videos is because the world is moving more into a time of collaboration, especially at a small business end. As a small business, you just won't be able to compete anymore with the large corporates. They already have all of these pieces that we're talking about. For example, your business might be working for a client that's nationwide, and overnight that client decides they're going to work with a single supplier for the whole country. Now, with time, your business could probably scale up enough to be able to deliver at that level. But if you're told you've got 2 months to get set up, or you'll lose the contract, it probably means you've just lost that client. And this actually happened with one of our own businesses. We had maintenance contracts with both the Caravan Club and the Caravan and Camping Club, and so we maintained a lot of their sites across Scotland. And part of managing that contract meant we had to have any problems fixed within 4 hours. So we had vans set up and engineers dedicated to that contract and based all over Scotland. But then they came to us and they said they were changing to a single contract for the whole of the UK. And this was happening a month later. So they'd literally just cancelled our contract unless we could take on that whole area. Now, we could have worked with other contractors across the country, but this takes time to set up. And you've got all sorts of reliability problems with some firms not turning up when they say they will, or they don't complete the work how the client expects it. It can be done, but it takes more than a month to set up. So we ended up losing the contract to a national contractor. But this is a strategy we could have worked on proactively to set up these joint ventures across the country, and then approach each of our national clients offering to take on their national contracts. So apart from the collaboration element, it's also a good way to grow a business. It's a proactive way. I've looked around all over for the last few years, and there isn't really any information available out there on how to use this joint venture strategy. All I've found is Jay Abraham wrote a book about joint ventures, but apart from that, there's not really anything else available to learn about doing it. Those that are available are either about the legal side of it, like the agreements, or they focus on niche categories like setting up marketing networks and using a JV model to do that. So by sharing my experiences of doing this, hopefully it can show you a different way to think about your own business and the type of strategies that you might use yourself. But also, because doing joint ventures is the model that we use ourselves now. So I hope by sharing this series on joint ventures, it might also attract the type of people or businesses to suit the type of projects that we want to do ourselves. But one of the key things I think is important is to shift your mindset. We've all been programmed to think that we have to own 100% of everything. But the joint venture mindset is about everyone sharing in the end result. It's not Victorian times with one person owning everything. We all have a specialist skill, and if we all focus on that one skill, we can all achieve much more together. One thing I'm interested in, and I spend a lot of time doing, is to look at how successful businesses operate and looking at their business model to see what actually makes them successful. And one of those businesses I've looked at was the Virgin Group. And the Virgin Group business model is all about creating joint ventures. Virgin Trains was a joint venture with Stagecoach, for example. So Virgin focused on what they do best, which is creating the brand and the customer experience. And then they work with an expert on the delivery side. Now, if Richard Branson had stuck to one business, trying to do everything like what most small businesses actually do, he'd only have one business, and it probably wouldn't be at the same scale that any of his current businesses are at. But instead, he focused only on what he was strong at and ended up owning a part of over 400 businesses. And some of those businesses, he owns a 50% share, but others he only owns 10%. It's a different way of thinking about business, but it's one that every small business will be forced to think about in the next few years if they want to survive. And as the corporate and tech giants start taking over each industry. Now, I'm no expert at this. I'm learning something new every joint venture project that we set up. But we've been doing this since 2009 in one form or another. Actually, we probably did it before that, but it was 2009 we started to use as a more formal approach to running a business. But with each project that we've been involved with, we've learned something new from it, and I'm sure I'll keep learning more every time. So let's get into the video. What are the 4 people you need in every project, business, or venture? The first is the person that takes care of the customer relationship. This person is responsible for taking money from the customer's pocket and putting it into your pocket. But they oversee and manage everything from sourcing new customers, negotiating contracts, and then managing that relationship with each customer over time to make sure that they keep spending. Now, you can use all sorts of titles for this person: commercial director, sales manager, whatever. Next, the second person is responsible for delivery. It's their role to make sure the customer gets what they've paid for, but also they're responsible for delivering that as efficiently as possible. So they might also be systems or process focused, as well as being good people managers. This person is focused on what's happening today. They shouldn't be thinking about creating business plans or projections. Their job is to think about what's happening right now. Third is the person responsible for finance and the overall governance of the company. This person is responsible for making sure that you've got enough money in the bank and that they'll raise the capital, and generally making sure that the company is run professionally, and more importantly, it's run legally. This is the sensible one of the group, the one that drags the others back. It drags them back down to earth and keeps everyone's feet on the ground. And then fourth is the person responsible for growth. This person has a future focus and is about seeing trends, seeing where the world is heading, and then creating a vision for the business so it aligns with where the world will be 3, 5, or 10 years into the future. So they'll create that vision, and then they'll work with the other 3 types to create a plan to get there. And this is where I sit. And then finally, on some occasions, where the business is really technical, something like software or cybersecurity or some kind of engineering or construction, for example, they'll also need a 5th person, which is responsible for making sure what's delivered is the best that it can be. And in this case, the delivery role becomes more like a people manager or a project manager. Now that we know this, where is the hole in your own business? Which of these areas or people are you missing? And here's a clue. It's normally the areas of the business that you're getting the most problems from. So how can you get these people? Well, we've talked through the options in the first video on how to find the perfect JV partner. But to recap on that, you can employ them directly, which is the old way of running a business. The problem with this route is that there's no guarantee of reaching that desired end result. When 5 o'clock comes, they go home and they get on with their own life. The second option is external consultants or contractors. For example, you might think that you've got the marketing and sales roles covered because you work with a marketing agency. But the issue is they get paid whether you reach the finish line or not. They aren't incentivized to reach that finish line. They're incentivized for you to spend as much money with them as possible. And then the third option, if you work with joint venture partners for each of these areas. Now, the partners you need will be based on what type of business you run. And you should watch my other video, the second in the series, on the 4 types of company, and then find partners that fit those other 3 types. Now, the benefit of working this way, take that marketing company example. If that marketing partner is paid for reaching the end result, they'll want to get there as fast and as cheaply as possible. They might cut out 80% of what they were doing previously, and instead just focus on the things that bring the highest results. See, this is about shifting to a mindset of ownership in the end result, rather than being paid for the process. So just to come back to the Virgin example, let me talk through what could be the pieces that they might use. So first, you've got Virgin that set up the whole business offering. They create the customer experience and the brand for the business. So that is Virgin Trains. And then you've got Trainline, and they take care of the customer relationship. And the interesting thing about that, although Trainline isn't under the Virgin brand, Virgin did actually invest in that business, and they were a major shareholder in it. And then you've got Stagecoach taking care of the delivery side, operating the trains. And then finally, the financing partner in this case, at least for most future businesses that they might create, is the Virgin Group holding company. But before that they had money, it would have been a wealthy investor or perhaps a firm that had access to investors, but also someone who could take care of managing those finances and then raising the money that they needed for each project. So based on our own experiences of doing this, there's a few key things to get right. The first, everyone has to have a shared vision of where you want to end up and why you're doing this. You all need to be heading in the same direction. The second, each partner has to agree expectations. What do you expect of the other partner? Third, communication and action plans are a big part. You need to have regular update meetings, whether that's a formal meeting face-to-face for 2 hours every Thursday, or something a bit less formal, like a phone call every 2 weeks. But you set an action plan of activities or outcomes that each partner has to achieve by the next meeting. And then you review the action plan to see what results you got from it. And this is where things might start to fall down, because I've found that people always seem to have other priorities, and they do things that perhaps are less hard, or things that they prefer to do. So that's where the fourth part comes in. You need to get some kind of buy-in from each partner. You can do that however makes sense, but there has to be a level of loss to each party if they don't deliver on their part of the arrangement. Now, the obvious one is each party just invests a chunk of money, but in some cases, one of the parties might not have a chunk of money to invest. So maybe for them, it might be sweat equity. They do something or get some outcome. So it's actually costs them a lot of time to get that outcome before they're formally inside that partnership. Fifth, how will you get out of the arrangement? How long will the arrangement last? What is the end goal for the project? For example, an easy example might, let's say the project is to build a house and then sell it. Well, maybe the end of the arrangement is when the project is sold. Next, how will each partner be rewarded, and when will that happen? There's really three ways you can look at the reward you're going to get. The first is paid for the process, like how most businesses operate today. The second, you're paid for the result, which is a share in the revenue or the profit. Or third, you're paid in equity. In other words, you get paid from dividends or when the business is sold. And 7, write everything down. I've been burnt a couple of times by just going on a handshake, and both times it's cost me a lot of money and also a lot of time. I found that as soon as money is involved, people become very greedy. And in my case, they tried to cut me out of the deal. And then finally, I'd say from personal experience, deal with one partner at a time. Create a partnership with one partner to perform a certain role. Don't try to bring in 4 or 5 different partners and have them all work under the same structure or agreement. I found that it's almost impossible to get multiple people to agree to work together and do what they're meant to do when they're meant to do it. I've created a structure of how to do this as part of a much bigger project, which I've done a separate video on to create that structure. But let's talk briefly about a project that we were involved with back around 2012. So you can see how this worked in action. This was a joint venture with a European software group. This project came about through a European business network that I was a part of. And the software company was based in Europe with offices in Poland and France, and they were looking for ways to get into the UK market. So they approached me to see what we could do together. We had a lot of experience in winning and delivering various types of government contracts. So we decided to work with this company. We set up a joint venture with them. We gave them a UK office base. We'd seek out and tender for various public sector contracts, and then they deliver them. So within about 6 months, we'd bid for various types of projects, from IT outsourcing to custom software development. And then there were some SaaS products that they developed for other clients that we also sold into the UK market. And the contracts averaged around 10 million each. And in the first year, we'd bid on contracts worth a combined value of about 200 million. And this partnership was at the earlier stages of us working under this model. So rather than setting up a new business, we were paid commission on every contract that we won. If we were doing it today, we'd probably set up a new business and have the other partner invest into it. That way, in this case, we'd have owned a piece of the business rather than being paid a share of the result. But this is more of a personal choice. You can do it however you're most comfortable. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. And if you've not seen my other videos on how to find a perfect joint venture partner, or the 4 types of company where I do a deep dive on various different industries, go and watch them now. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, I've got over 300 videos on my channel talking about lots of subjects like this. So if you found this helpful, you should definitely subscribe. Click the bell icon, and then you'll be notified every time I publish a new video.